Well, and welcome to this week's A Photographic Life. And I want to start off this week talking a little bit about photo competitions. If you're a regular reader of the things I write or listening to this podcast, you'll know that I'm not a fan of photographic competitions, particularly those which are paid to enter. As far as I'm concerned, they are judgments on who can afford to enter, not what is the best work. Perhaps this all goes back to when I was a child. I used to enter art, painting competitions, and I was very successful. And then I met somebody at school who is a friend of mine still, who is an extremely successful artist. And he'd never entered any of these competitions. He'd never considered entering a competition, and therefore he'd never won a competition. And yet his work, his talent and his ability was far, far above and beyond mine. I think that's the problem with photography competitions. Photography is not something that should be a competitive sport. It shouldn't be a race to the top. There's been lots of discussions over the years about different competitions. The amount of times that deadlines get extended. The reason for that is very straightforward. Not enough people have entered, not enough money's been made. Let's not sort of beat around the bush here. I also have to say that a long time ago now, maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I was asked to judge competitions on a regular basis. Big competitions, from World Press Photo and Red Bull photography competitions to smaller ones. The reason was because I was the editor of Professional Photographer magazine, and therefore the people running the competitions thought I was a good booking. Since I stopped working in that environment, I've not been asked once to judge a photo competition. You'd think perhaps that whatever profile I may have through United Nations of Photography in this podcast, I may do. But of course, I speak out in these on these platforms, in these arenas, and therefore that's not necessarily what somebody wants to hear. Anyway, that's how I've felt for a long time. It's how I think I will always feel. But I saw something the other day posted online that provoked, whatever, the discussion for this week. It says this. It's from somebody called Alice Martins. She is a photojournalist in Damascus. And she says, "Hi all, I'm in the jury of the World Press Photo Contest this year. And while I can't personally help with any entries, I'm compiling a list of photojournalists, especially Syrian, who have produced relevant work in Syria in 2025, to reach out to them and encourage them to enter. I'd be grateful for recommendations in case I missed anyone." And this was a WhatsApp message that was sent out and then reposted by somebody else elsewhere, who made the comment, if the World Press Photo needs outreach, it should come from the institution itself through open and public channels, not from individual jurors on WhatsApp chats. Well, I have to completely agree. And I have to say, and I'm sure you feel the same as me, there's a real problem here. The idea of encouraging specific people, specific photographers, getting recommendations for people to even enter. Does that mean that in the judging process there may be something going on? Perhaps World Press Photo aren't aware of this. Perhaps the juror feels that they're doing that's perfectly okay. There's no problem with what she's doing, that she's opening the door to people whose work should be seen. But I think that's to fundamentally misunderstand the role of a juror on a photo competition. In fact, on any competition. I've always said that if you want to win a photo competition, if you really feel you need to enter, and again, I have to say, why would you enter? I know there is a belief that by entering and winning competitions, sort of doors open and so forth. I can tell you, having won some, that's not the case for me. And it's not the case for most people. Okay, you may be able to point out a specific situation where it did work, but they are very, very rare. What I do know is a lot of the people running the big photo competitions have a very nice life, get a very nice salary from working on them, and the income's not bad through the competition itself. If it's not good, they disappear after one iteration. So don't be surprised if you see a competition disappear, or you see a competition suddenly not put forward who the winners were. I wonder what happens in that situation. I see all of these things a lot. Anyway, just in short, if you're going to enter a photo competition, really understand why. If you're going to pay, make sure you know what you're paying for. Always look at the jurors and think, do I do work that they like? If you don't, you won't get anywhere. It's a subjective thing. And increasingly, panels are chosen for reasons, agendas outside of their photographic knowledge. As long as you take all of that into account, fill your boots. As some of you may know, we did a kind of a soft launch last year of our YouTube channel. I'm looking at YouTube for a number of different kind of possibilities, I suppose, to do with photography. So stay tuned about that. I'm yet to fully decide upon how we're going to adopt it, but I think we definitely will be moving into YouTube in a big way over the coming year. But in no way will that impact upon this podcast, other than that it also will get hosted there. Now, as I say, it's been building nice and slowly, actually, which is good. I'm not a big fan of overnight success. It tends to lead to overnight failure. But anyway, a few messages. I know you enjoy the listeners' letters. There's a couple of messages been posted on the YouTube channel. It is UN of Photo if you want to check it out. We've been recording some of the conversations, so there's some visuals there. And there's also just the audio of the podcast, as it appears wherever else you might be listening to. Anyway, at Delphwind, DELPHWYND, says, the dogs weren't at all impressed when I listened to the podcast this morning. They had to shiver around the pond a couple of times more than they really wanted to, whilst I took it all in one session for a change. Always a listening pleasure, though, and looking forward to the new monthly questions thread. Yes, that is the Proustian quiz, which is coming up every month. Keep up the fantastic work, Grant. Well, I'll certainly try. Dave Caldwell says, I listened to this at 5:30 this morning with my early coffee, sat in my car watching the world go past, parked in the market in Doncaster, as I do most weeks. I enjoyed all the words the photographers were saying. I enjoyed it better tonight at 8 o'clock with a beer and not a coffee. I'm really looking forward to the podcast in the year ahead. Keep up the good work with the podcast and your writing. Well, I'll try. I like the way you see the world of photography. Well, thanks very much, Dave. That's most appreciated, as are all of your letters. So if you would like to comment on what I'm saying, what we're doing, what I'm writing, do email us or drop a message on social media or on the YouTube channel. And you can get us through email at unitednationsofphotography.com. Just click on the contact, it comes straight through to me, and I reply to every email, message, and anything else that I get sent. I started this podcast talking about the time when I was at Professional Photographer magazine. I was the editor of the magazine. Prior to me taking it over, it was very much about weddings and event photography and Photoshop and camera reviews. You know, the classic kind of thing that a photo photography magazine used to be. I was really shocked when I was asked to edit the magazine, because what I wanted to do was to get rid of all the wedding events and Photoshop and camera reviews and do something different, which is exactly what I did. It was really successful with the world of professional photography, what I consider to be professional photography, not so much so amongst the enthusiasts. I was really surprised also that when I met my fellow journalists, my colleagues on other photography magazine titles, not one of them in the UK had ever worked as a photographer or actually had any photographic experience other than writing about cameras and all of that kind of stuff that you see. They were very reliant upon interviewing professional photographers, or whom they perceived to be professional photographers, and then getting the information from them. So it was very much a formula that had done very well under the birth of digital photography, where new cameras were coming out all of the time. Manufacturers needed to sell them, and therefore the magazines made a lot of money through advertising, and people needed to buy the magazines to find out about the latest cameras. Really straightforward, actually. A very similar situation with hi-fi in the 1970s, but I go off at a tangent. Anyway, so when I started to edit the magazine and got rid of all of the holy grails that they believed a magazine should have, I was regularly questioned about the idea of what I thought professional photography was. I'd never really given it any thought in the past. I just accepted that professional photography was what I was involved in as an art director, as a commissioner, as a creative director, and as a photographer. I got paid to make photographs for magazines and brands. That was basically where it was. However, what I realized was I needed to sort of explain it to these people. So what I did was I broke photography, or getting paid for photography, into two specific areas. One, professional photography, as I've just described. The other, domestic photography. And what I meant by that was people getting paid for photography, the weddings, the events, those kinds of people who were getting commissioned by people whose job it wasn't to commission photography. The ordinary person in the street that may or may not only ever commission a photographer once or twice in their life. What that meant for that type of domestic photographer was that they had to be really, really good at marketing, because the moment they made work for a client, that client had gone. It wasn't like professional photography where you would build client relationships. So I had no issue with either side. I just thought it was useful to put a little bit of a divider to explain the two ways of working with the photographic medium. Now, here we are 15 odd years later, and social media is full of people proclaiming themselves as experts on professional photography. Primarily, I feel, from that area of wedding and events, and a strange kind of array of new types of photography, which seems to me be coming out of America, about the idea of commissioning a photographer to photograph Christmas or a child's 18th birthday, or all of these, every single thing in life. Perhaps this is an Instagramification of the world and feeling that you need to document everything, looking great so that you can then share it and give an impression of a wonderful life. Anyway, what I am seeing is a real lack of understanding of what professional domestic photography is, what the kind of language is that should be used to be perceived as professional, and so forth. Now, where does that leave professional photography today? Is there a future for it? It's a big question, and I think a lot of you listening who have been working as professional photographers for some period of time will say to me, Grant, everything you're about to say is wrong, or everything you're about to say is right. I don't know. I think it feels very strongly into two different camps. My feeling is that there is a future for professional photography, but it isn't the past. It isn't how professional photography used to be. It is going to be much more reliant on who you are as a person. Your personal work will be more important than ever. There'll be a bigger responsibility on you to identify potential places where your work could exist, the people who could pay you. Whereas in the past, you would hope for clients to come to you, you now have to go to clients, and you have to work really hard at that. And that doesn't mean building up loads of likes on Instagram or on Threads or Blue Sky or anywhere else. I don't personally think social media has got anything to do with getting a job going forwards. Most of the potential clients you will have will be really busy. There'll be small teams. They have not got time to doom scroll through Instagram and hope to come across you and love your work. It's just not going to happen. I think what we are doing is we're kind of returning back to a certain kind of analog idea of the professional photography. And don't worry, I don't mean black and white analog at all. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. And I'm still constantly amazed by people who put that forward as an argument. What I mean is, in a world that's being hyper-digitized, our personalities are more important than ever. And this is something I've picked up upon in some of the writing I've posted recently. A lot, by the way, posted on UnitedNationsOfPhotography.com recently for you to catch up on, but also some of the conversations I've had with Bill and Fiona. My feeling is that an old traditional postcard is the way to go forward to communicate with people. A letter, a little gift, actually speaking to people, going out and demonstrating to a client that you can solve their problems, not only with photography. It might be the moving image. It might be the written word. It might be the spoken word. What soft skills, what transferable skills does a photographer have that they could share with somebody that person doesn't understand that a photographer has? What it really is media literacy. And that is a key skill today. Media literacy that every company and every brand, every business needs to have. And I think as a photographer, you can either work on those skills or you will have those skills. You should be able to communicate. And I think for me, at the beginning of 2026, at a year where everything is absolutely on fire, to a shocking extent, and I don't think anybody listening to this podcast or myself can be unaware of the level of insecurity that we all feel and that other people we hope will pay us for our photography will feel. To a certain extent, I think we need to be the steadying hand. We need to be the experts, not just the experts on photography, but the experts on communication, on visual communication. I think that repositioning is going to be very difficult for a lot of people. Nothing in life, I think, is easy, but it is achievable. And I think that's a mindset that wouldn't be a bad idea for all of us to adopt over the coming months. I'll keep writing about this, talking about this, and hopefully offering some ideas as to how you could either reapproach your professional practice or reconsider it. Certainly on the MA that I run, the online MA through Oxford Brookes University in professional photography, that's exactly what we're doing. And it's been very interesting to speak with so many photographers coming to me who are successful working photographers but do want to reposition themselves within the marketplace. As I've said before, this is not an advertisement for that. It's just making you aware that if you are having those struggles, you are not alone. Anyway, that's it for this week. Hope you've enjoyed the conversation. As I say, don't forget to check out UnitedNationsOfPhotography.com for my regular writing on the subject of photography. I think it's an interesting three-part series just gone up on photo book collecting. Basically around two articles a week I write about things that occur to me, and they may also occur to you. Anyway, over the coming week, I know what I'm going to do. You know what you're going to do. Take care.